We have with us a variety of protesters, some of whom have taken the law into their own hands for their own particular cause. We meet them in a moment, but the issue was thrown into sharp focus this week when 4 women invaded a television news broadcast.
Good evening. The headlines at 6 o'clock. In the House of Lords, a vote is taking place now on a challenge to the poll tax. Tory rebels have said that the tax is unfair and unpopular. And repairing the roads, why the cones signal a lot more chaos this summer. And I do apologise if you're hearing quite a lot of noise in this studio at the moment. I'm afraid that we have rather been invaded by some people who we hope to be removing very shortly. In the meantime, if you can possibly ignore the background news, we'll bring the news as best we can.
Sarah, you sound very muffled there. Why are you so muffled?
Well, Nicholas Witchell was sitting on me at the time, so it's quite hard to speak. Also, there's somebody else sitting on the bottom of my body, so I was actually quite frightened. I mean, I actually thought I was going to suffocate. So
a lot of people here and a lot of people I've spoken to sort of said, wasn't that a jolly good stunt? But wasn't it a ridiculously irresponsible thing to have done, to have gate-crashed a bulletin like that? Why did you do it?
No, I don't think it was at all. I mean, there's about 4 news programmes in a whole evening. I don't think it was irresponsible. I don't think anyone had missed anything. I mean, the most exciting thing they were reporting on that evening was the poll tax. And, you know, I don't think 5 minutes would have sort of worried many people.
And the reason we did it was because Section 28 of the Local Government Act became law that night at midnight. And it's a basic civil attack on the rights, the civil rights of lesbians and gays in this country.
And if you'd asked everyone here what you did, they'd all have remembered what you did. But I doubt very many would know why you did it.
Did you hear Section 28 mentioned?
Yes. There you go.
So was it a justified protest?
Yes. I think so. I hope so. I hope it... Well, it's got us on this programme and we're talking about Section 28, so everybody who's watching this programme knows that Section 28 is an attack on civil rights.
Well, we're talking about protest rather than your reasons for protest.
Sure,
David Gilroy-Bevan, what was your reaction? Were you watching the 6 o'clock news that night?
Yes, I was. I thought Sue Lawley put up a very good show to manage to get it over and get the news out that people wanted to hear. They didn't want to hear a protest. They tuned in to listen to the news of what was happening. One of the things that was commented on was a very important matter, the poll tax, whether one agrees with it or doesn't agree with it. The very fact that the report was on that was of very sufficient magnitude for most British people to want to hear.
It's quite funny to note, isn't it, that the next 3 news programmes reported the 6 o'clock news and reported why we invaded the news. So it was important, really, wasn't it? Or else it wouldn't have been reported.
You might find,
3
indeed,
newses.
that your protest didn't bring you just notoriety, which you obviously wanted.
Well, of course it brings everything.
It might have been totally counterproductive, and it might have brought you great unpopularity.
Well...
But does that worry you, unpopularity? Would you have minded if people said, you silly women, why did you do that?
No, well, most of the papers the next day portrayed us very badly, and we expect that. I don't think that most of the papers are going to say, oh, these are wonderful women, or anything of the sort, or, oh, of course, Section 28 is a very important act, and we should take notice of it. But it has got out to people, and it's making people talk about.
Let's involve some other people. I want to talk about different forms of protest, things that other people have done. Mike Thornton, you took a little forest of conifers and you put them on Mr. Terry Wogan's back lawn.
That is correct. Guilty as charged.
Why did you do it?
Well, we did it for the same reasons as they did, to publicise an issue which we felt wasn't receiving the attention that it deserved.
Which was the loophole in the law whereby you could buy into planting vast areas of conifers in Scotland?
Yes, the loophole in the law that allowed rich people to set planting costs of conifers which were ruining the Scottish and the British heritage against their income tax. So we, in doing our protest, were attempting to set the agenda for what was on the news that day. So were these people, so is everybody here. And the reason we were doing it is because if you got a cause which doesn't have the sort of lobbying clout behind it that the poll tax does, where the government is publicising the poll tax right, left and centre with state money, then what are you to do? I mean, people talk about access to democracy and so on. They say, you know, go through the normal channels and we will everything will come out in the wash. But in the end, what gets on the news is what gets pushed hard. We're pushing it hard in our way. The government, in this case, was pushing the poll tax hard in their way. We're just fighting for space.
I wonder if one can comment on that. Actually, what got left out on the earlier bit, on the poll tax, was the fact that the Tory rebels were putting forward substantial amendments to the poll tax. That was the bit of the news that was blotted out. Terry Wagon, I've got less sympathy for. He already apparently owned half the Scottish forest land. But it must be said that in the budget this year that was enunciated in Parliament, an announcement had already then been made that loophole which was referred to is going to be dealt with and is going to be wiped out. So I rather... yours came earlier, did it?
Yes.
Well...
And
maybe
it came
it's
before the budget because we wanted to influence the Chancellor. Our sources said that there was a debate going on within the Treasury on whether or not this concession would have to be made. It was a question of whether it was, you know, grudging.
Yeah.
Are we going to do it? Do we have to do it? Can't we get away with it? So we got up there to raise the profile of the issue, to make it clear from the public support that our action generated, not because we got it on the news, but because we got a lot of letters and a lot of MPs got letters in our support. That helped influence the decision.
I take your point, but in fact, I must assure you this, that what goes into the budget has been predetermined months and months and months and months beforehand.
Let's talk about somebody...
It would not be really your little stunt that activated
All right,
that.
well, let's talk about something that I think shocked a lot of people. John Curtin, you're an animal rights demonstrator. You've been involved in a lot of things. You've broken into vivisection laboratories. But 4 years ago, you dug up the Duke of Beaufort's grave. You desecrated the grave.
What we did was a publicity stunt. It was a hoax. We dug a small amount of soil away from the grave. The reason why we did it was to highlight the atrocities of what goes on day in, day out. In Foxton, I've brought a little photograph along here, what you can see there. Which camera are we on? I don't know if you can see that. It's a terrier man from a foxhunt digging up a live fox from a fox earth. He's about to batter it over the head with a spade and throw it to a live pack of foxhounds. The Duke of Beaufort, throughout his whole life, killed and maimed foxes. The man was a maniac. What we done was a publicity stunt to draw this to people's attention. It was a hoax.
But you desecrated a grave, nonetheless.
We did. Yeah, but when you put that into perspective of what fox hunters do day in, day out, is what they do justified.
You went to prison.
It pales into insignificance compared to... I was scratching a bit of soil on a piece of earth. They are killing and maiming innocent creatures. I went to prison for it.
Mike Hartley from the RSPCA, you campaign day in, day out for animal rights. Somebody like John goes in and makes a big noise and a big fuss. Presumably, do you approve of what he does? Do they help the cause of animal welfare?
No, they don't, and I think it's counterproductive. I think in the long term, illegal acts of that nature do more damage to the cause. If you start breaking into fur farms and you start releasing these foxes...
I seem to notice that this place has been complained about to you and your RSPCA branch, and you're one of the inspectors of this place, and you have done sod all for 5 bloody years about it.
Yeah.
And what do you intend to do about it? Someone complained to you this week about a dog there, and the RSPCA hasn't been down yet.
In actual fact, the funny thing is, I've had 3 independent veterinary surgeons round that fox farm that they're referring to.
All paid for by Mr. Gill. Totally independent?
Totally independent.
Not friends of his own vet? Not friends of his own vet?
Totally independent.
When your blokes don't bloody investigate things that they're asked to do.
No, hang on. Look, I don't want to get into the pros and cons of one particular case. I want to talk about who achieves most and by what means.
I'll tell you.
The point is, Mike, that they are making is that in your low-profile way, you don't get anything done.
That's total rubbish. We were founded in 1824, and there is not one item of animal legislation that we haven't had some effect on by peaceful protest and legitimate means.
Look at the legislation, look at the animal abuse which is on the increase.
Look, if you
what has the RSPCA done
of protest to its
final result?
Let him answer, let him answer.
If you take your type of protest to its final result, we have anarchy. The government makes the laws. We try and influence the government.
What about the slave trade? What about child abuse?
Do you know what we've got? We've got a parliamentary liaison officer that's in the House of Commons day in, day out, trying to get private members' bills to support animal welfare
helping
legislation.
Animals are suffering now. What are you ever going to do about Cockspur Farm? Can I say something? There's a Cockspur Farm. There's a farm 8 miles away from here. Thousands of Arctic foxes are bred there. This man has been up there, I don't know how many times. He is responsible
When
for the
they-
death of thousands of Arctic foxes. What are you ever
Do you know
going to
what
do
they
about
did?
Hang
it?
on, this
When
is
they
not the
actually-
place to debate
this is
that
not
one
the place to
specific
debate
issue.
the fox farm.
Only the
But in
methods.
actual fact,
Oh,
when they
God.
did go in there,
Really? What are we
they
talking
What do we
about?
do? Bite
released
the
them
heads of
out.
the
What are we
foxes off
talking
us,
about?
They released them out. They threw bricks
Never
through the
been
window.
done.
The owner's child was injured. That does
Never
the
been
cause.
done. Lies.
All right, okay,
Wow.
fine.
Lies.
Let's stop this one. Let's move this on to a different area of discussion altogether. John and Joe, you scaled up Nelson's column on behalf of Greenpeace to protest about acid rain. A number of people who saw that protest were horrified at what they called the irresponsibility of it. A, that you might have damaged it. B, that you might have hurt passers-by.
See that you
Was
might
that
have killed
irresponsible
yourself.
protest?
God forbid
No,
you'd
not
have
at
killed
all. First
yourself.
of all, before we do anything like that, we'll assess that we weren't going to damage ourselves. That's the most important thing. We feel that no matter how important the action is, personal safety and the safety of others is also of very great importance. So, as regards damaging the column, we certainly wouldn't want to cause any criminal damage in any way at all. That's a very important part of the way Greenpeace runs its actions.
You were hired by Greenpeace, or you without money?
No, not so much
I mean,
hired by
would you
Greenpeace.
work as mercenary protesters for anyone who said, "Please, would you come and do this as a protest
No,
for
because
us"?
you don't. We have a skill. We're both professional. Well, not professional anymore, but we are mountaineers, so we're very expert mountaineers. So we have a special skill that we can offer to Greenpeace. Now, we believe in many of the issues that Greenpeace advance, and if somebody said, will you go and climb such and such for us, and we'll give you £500, and I said, well, why is it for? And I didn't believe in why they were wanting us to do it, I wouldn't do it. It had nothing to do with the cause. I mean, you seem to be assuming that everybody here on the stage are just doing things out of some fanatical reason. We're not.
Hell of it.
To some, you've got to accept that people have commitments to things. Now, there's got to be some level. You're talking about protests and what level you take protests to. I mean, you're breaking the law. When we go to court, we're aware that we're breaking the law. But who made the law? The law was made by men. Humankind, sorry. Humankind are fallible, and laws are not there to be strictly stuck to.
Not to
I mean,
be broken, but to be as a transient
not to be
thing,
broken, I mean-
updated at various times. What can you do
There's
when
obviously-
you've gone through all the
There's the
correct
moral
channels,
code.
you've done all the political lobbying, and you don't get anywhere? That's when the case for direct action
you
actually becomes
have to have some sort of
pertinent to it.
moral high point from which you start,
Direct
where you
action
say
works.
you've gone through every other avenue. You just don't do a direct action.
There's obviously
You go through
a
every
need,
avenue.
isn't
You
there?
lobby, you go to Parliament, you do everything you can, you do researches, and if that meets a blank wall, then you do it. And you do it simply to draw attention, not to government, but to everybody in the country, to say there is a problem here. We're just drawing attention to it. We're not trying to be maniacs. We're just saying there are rights here that are involved, that law is not capable of covering everything.
Yes, but the
You're not
people
gonna
that
say
I
everything's not
the
hunky-dory.
people that I represent in Parliament, which is the place where protest is legitimately made. If the people don't want me, they'll return me to the dole
We
queue.
have gone-
Let me finish, madam. Now, once you adopt the breaking of law as a mechanism that justifies the end to which you're going, then you are subverting the security upon which this country and everybody in it lives by.
That is rubbish.
Eleanor.
And
You are talking,
We have
you are
gone
talking about a principle.
Rubbish
You are
it
talking
might be,
about
but
the
a lot of
principle.
people agree with it.
You are talking about
And
a
might
principle
I just
called
say one thing
the
to
means
you?
justifies the end. I think
No,
we're
let's
talking
just-
about.
Let me
David,
just
hang on a
finish what
second.
I was saying.
That is not
a
what is
gentleman
involved
called
here.
Mr. Hitler, some time ago, some time
It
ago,
was the Tory party.
Yeah, we know.
demounted
big stunt.
parliamentary democracy, and he ran a
This isn't
totalitarian
democracy, though, is
state.
it?
And
If people
somebody
have to go and
said
hijack the 6 o'clock
they
news to get that point
came
across.
to arrest.
Really? Is this
They
democracy?
came to arrest the
Sorry?
Jews, and I didn't protest. I didn't
David,
protest.
hang on.
We have to
You've
do it.
had
And
your say
then
in
there
the
was
moment.
nobody left to protest.
Why?
If
Because we don't get coverage otherwise,
if
do
you
we?
throw
Hang on,
aside
this is
the
anarchy
law,
here. Nobody's going to get a
the
point
people
across.
cannot protest in the way that democracy allows
Right.
them to do.
Enough. Thank you. Eleanor.
I'd like to say that before I take any action, before I make any kind of illegal, legal, any kind of action, I go through the processes. I go to Parliament, I lobby MPs, I talk to, and a lot of the time I waste my time because I've been treated so badly by MPs, and I have been spoken to so badly by MPs that I sit there and think to myself, why am I wasting my time? But I go through your process, and I've gone through it, and when that fails, then I go to an extreme, and then I hijack the 6 o'clock news.
Yeah.